Hi everyone, this is Heather Lawton and from the Flourish.Academy, where our goal is to empower, educate, and elevate you to create a life that you love through the art and business of photography. In this video, we are going to replace skies inside of Photoshop. But first, please check out our sponsor, ymcamera.com, for all of your photography needs. They sometimes even ship faster than Prime. And if you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your photographer friends. It helps us to produce more content. In a recent video, we looked at this image taken by my good friend Nicole Begley in order to determine whether or not Lightroom or Photoshop can select skies in a more efficient way. And what we determined is they're actually pretty equal, but when you want to replace skies, you have to do that inside of Photoshop. So let's go to Edit and then select Sky Replacement. And as I just mentioned, Photoshop does a pretty good job at selecting the sky. Replacing it, well, we're going to have to experiment with this a little bit. And you'll see that they've categorized these skies. Blue skies, we have spectacular skies. We have sunsets, and you can even purchase skies from the internet. But the important thing here is getting the sky to match what was happening the day that you took the image. So what I want you to pay attention to in this image is to the left of our subject, we have pretty harsh sun hitting the side of this building. So that tells me that the sun was coming from camera right. And if you pick certain skies, it's just not going to look right with the way the sun is hitting the building. Also, it relates to the depth of field, what aperture this was shot at, making sure that all of those things are congruent, because if they're not, you will leave your user feeling confused. So maybe we could pick one of these skies and just experiment a little bit with shifting the edge, see what happens. Well, okay, now we have this terrible halo coming off of our buildings, which is not working. So we definitely don't want to shift the edge. That way, if we take it higher, then it goes inward on the building. Listen, that's important to understand what's happening with shift edge, making sure that you don't have some sort of strange halo effect around the rest of your image. You can adjust the brightness of this sky. I think this sky doesn't really work with this image because I think it needs to be much brighter. And you can even adjust the temperature if you feel like it's too blue, which I do in this case. We could add yellow by moving this slider to the right. Still, I don't think it looks good. We can increase the scale, maybe. I mean, this image has other issues. We need to add light to our subject in the foreground, etc. You can flip the sky. There are many different adjustments you can make. I will say before we look at a few more images, when I output the sky, which by the way, I don't think this looks good. I would not use this sky. In fact, I wouldn't use any of these skies on this image. I would probably just enhance what was already, because that looks ridiculous. I would just enhance what was already there rather than replace it in this image. But when it comes time to output, I do like to output this to a duplicate layer and say, okay, that way I have preserved my background layer and I can maybe use masking or different adjustments to blend that even better. All of the images, in fact, that we're looking at today were taken by my friend Nicole Begley because she shoots a lot of pets in exotic locations and she gets a lot of skies in her images and I just don't. So let's go to Edit, Sky Replacement, and I'm really curious with what's going to happen in the background in these archways. And again, I'm wondering if any of these skies, it's just not going to match what was happening in the image. This looks like it was shot on an overcast day. The sun appears to be setting to the camera left. I'm looking at the dog's eyes in order to determine that. So if you try to put some sort of spectacular sky, I just don't think it's going to match what was that looks insane. And I'm hoping that when photographers are using the sky replacement, that they're using some discernment here and how this looks. Now, this one might actually work potentially with some adjustments. Let's look at this shift edge to see what happens with our edges. That's something to pay attention to for sure. I I think we could probably warm this up just a little bit, and let's output this to a duplicate layer and say, okay, and look at the before and after. A little too stormy, but we could reduce the opacity of that sky replacement just to add a little bit to it. And I think as long as it looks natural, like it could have really happened, then that's the best you can do. I selected this image because of the tree line to see how Photoshop would do with the sky. But to be honest with you, well, let me ask you a question. Why would you ever replace the sky? It looks beautiful. I might enhance it a little bit, but I don't think I would ever replace it. But if you wanted to just see again how Photoshop performs with those trees in the background, it's actually not doing too bad of a job. I like to shift the edge to see specifically what's happening around those edges. And again, you could say, okay, make sure you're outputting that to a duplicate layer. You just changed it and shifted it a little bit. I don't know. I don't think it looks natural. Okay, next. This image was shot on a pretty overcast day, so I don't think that replacing the sky is going to make it look any better. I mean, maybe if you wanted to experiment with dropping the opacity on this just to give it a little bit of color, but I think you would need to add something that looked like it could possibly be overcast, maybe stormy. I don't think so. I don't think that works either. Anything like that, again, is going to look ridiculous. This was not shot at sunset, so I wouldn't even select any of those. I'm being cautious here because I think this tool is really powerful and works pretty well, but I think it's dangerous. And I say that because I'm just worried that people are going to use it because they can and not because it matches the lighting or what's actually happening in the scene, which is going to make it look fake, which is not the goal. You just want to enhance what's already there. It needs to be subtle yet significant. And by the way, if you're struggling with Photoshop, please make sure you check out all of our resources at the Flourish Academy. If you just go to Flourish.Academy/Photoshop, you can find all of those via that link. Let's take a look at one more image. We actually looked at this image in a previous video when we were taking a look at the background blur. So make sure you check that one out. But let's see what happens with sky replacement. And I'm concerned with the trees in the background to understand how Photoshop is going to make that selection. And do you see that just starts to not look great? The selection on those trees, well, it's challenging. And maybe there is a different way. For sure, there are better tools to select this than the automated version. But again, I suppose if you wanted to experiment with some of these skies, the color absolutely does not match. So this is one where adding yellow would probably make this look a lot more natural. But even then, I just don't think it looks that great. Oh, I should also mention in the foreground adjustments, this is typically set to multiply. If you set it to screen, it's going to add this haze over it. Essentially, this is how the pixels on one layer interact with the pixels below them. So more often than not, you'll want to keep that on multiply. And you can adjust this lighting. You can see that it's changing a little bit. I mean, it's pretty slight and more color there. This is in obviously the foreground. That's why they're called foreground adjustments. But I typically don't mess with the foreground adjustments because if I'm doing any editing to the image, it's probably already been done at this point and I don't want to do anything further. So again, I could output this to a duplicate layer, drop the opacity, and maybe that enhanced it a little bit. Okay, that seems fair. I would just caution you. I would use this tool with discretion. I hope that you found this useful. I'll see you in the next video.